Hi, Ted. This is Chad Barron. You're listening to My Alien Life.
And I noticed that it had a dome-shaped top and a rounded bottom, and it was not touching the ground. I felt this sharp pain in my eye, and then I had this telepathic voice that said, "Look straight ahead, do not look at the lights."
Those kind of speeds exist in our galaxy, and this object came from outside of our solar system. Any random object that wasn't part of our solar system happened to be traveling in the direction of our solar system. It can easily traverse our solar system with a speed that's incredibly large.
It had been tested on lab mice, and it didn't kill them, and so I wasn't really that leery about it.
I could see that there's a fear on his face, and he took off, we took off, so something was wrong there, man. Something was wrong there, man. They cut into something that they didn't know. They didn't know what was wrong there, man, and there was some problems.
My Alien Life is recorded high atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is heard all over the world, and you can listen everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you'll find links to every episode, stories, photos, the My Alien Life Legends page, and much more. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron while you're checking out all the content. I'm your host, Cameron Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hey, happy Friday, everybody. It's Cameron Logan, and welcome to My Alien Life, the podcast. If you're new to the podcast, great. It's great to have you here. Try to get together every week and talk about aliens, UFOs, any related phenomenon. Also talk about cryptids, ghost spirits, whatever you want to talk about. And, excuse me, I often have really, really great guests. Always have really, really great guests. And so pleasure for me to be here with you on a Friday night. A little bit different tonight. And I'll tell you why. Had a little problem with my Rodecaster Pro, which is a soundboard, which basically I can interface with cell phones and my computer, and I can have guests that call in. I can have guests that talk to me via Skype or Zoom meeting or whatever. So it works really well until about 2 weeks ago. So a little problem with it. Basically, it won't turn on. And Rode, I believe, is in Australia. So they have some authorized service centers. So I sent that in via FedEx, not overnight, which was my first mistake. So I sent it in via FedEx ground. I guess it was 10 days ago. 2 or 3 days later, after it left here, it had a scan in Portland, Oregon. It was going to the East Coast. And so it's not there. It hasn't shown up. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. There's no insurance involved. I don't know if you've ever tried to do an insurance claim with FedEx. It's particularly painful, and it doesn't work very well. And I've had one other experience, and I lost a little bit on that other experience. Lost money. So this is my second loss through FedEx, and hopefully we'll be able to find that, and hopefully I can use it again, because it was absolutely amazing. So tonight, I'm using my iPhone. As you can see, I don't have my usual mic, and I've kind of experimented with that, and it sounds okay. I think we can get by. I think that the version, if you're listening on Podbean or if you're listening on Spotify, hopefully I can mix that well enough to where everybody can hear me just fine. So what's going on with me? Been trying to put the word out that I'm busy writing a book. I've been writing a book now for a very, very long time. Anybody that knows me personally knows that I've been working on it. I don't even remember when the idea to write a book first came to me. Prior to becoming a podcaster, again, I worked in various fields of communication, including radio. The plan was always to somehow communicate my experiences to people who would hopefully correspond with me, and I could figure out, exactly not exactly, but maybe what's going on. We'll never figure out what exactly is going on. I mean, that's hopeful, but maybe we can figure out why people are having these same experiences. And I'm talking about alien-related ET experiences, UFO sightings, things of that nature. And we talk about that all the time on the podcast. If you're new to the show, the podcast, you can find every episode at www.myalienlifepodcast.com. So check it out. So thank you to all the listeners that have been listening to me. I think we're in like 3 years, going on 4 years now, maybe. It's been a while. And it's really gone by fast. I never really anticipated that I would be doing this that long. I really had no goal set up. Again, this was sort of a vehicle to help me to get my experiences online so people could compare and contrast and talk about my experiences and figure out possibly if their experiences were related to mine, and hopefully to convey what they had gone through back to me so I could kind of figure out possibly, maybe I'm not crazy. I don't know. That's still debatable. So, we'll figure that part. So tonight, I basically wanted to get together and talk about what's been going on and a little bit about the book. Had some really cool experiences lately with reading different accounts that people have emailed me. And, I used to get quite a few. I don't get as many as I used to, but usually I get about one a week, and they're fantastic. And a gentleman just emailed me a couple of those. I'm not going to talk about those tonight. I'll talk about them next week. But yeah, so if you have any stories that you want to tell and don't feel, or you're feeling too shy to be online with me, it would be nice if you could shoot me an email, and you can find that on my website, and email me and let me know what happened, where it happened, and what exactly it was. And, we can always talk about that, or I can talk about it with other people. We can formulate an opinion and get that back to you and try to figure out, if we've heard about that, or if we know people that have had that same kind of experience. So it's kind of interesting when we do that, because I feel like we're breaking new ground when we do that. So it's pretty amazing, the whole process. I love it when somebody emails me and gives me some information about themselves, and it's something that I've seen, or it's something that I've heard, or that I've felt, and I've never told anybody. And this person has had the same experience. So that's cool. I love that. So again, I want to talk a little bit about the book tonight. If you go to the website, myalienlifepodcast.com, and you click on the book, you can see the book cover. The book cover's done, and illustrations are done for the book. The process that I've been going through, I probably worked on a book for about 10 years, and I didn't really have a plan in mind. I took all these accounts that I had as a child and later on in life and put them on paper, formulated some theories or or rather I illustrated these theories so people could read about it, see some drawings, see some different things that I'd come up with. And, there's a lot of that. And I didn't feel like I was ever really into that. And here's why. There's a lot of books about UFOs out there, lots of books about extraterrestrials, and they're injected with a lot of theory, a lot of hypothesis about, why and how this happens and where it happens and who's responsible, whatever. And that's really never was my intention. Never really wasn't my intention with podcasts. So when I was writing this book, I kind of came to these places. It was taking way too long. I would kind of get stuck because I was trying to get too deep. And I really didn't want to get deep and have that intention. I was never intended on creating some sort of theory behind the whole extraterrestrial experience. So I came to the conclusion reluctantly that I wasn't telling my story. And when I say reluctantly, it's because I knew that I was going to have to rewrite this. Son of a bitch. Yeah. I was going to have to rewrite this. And after all that work, it was going to be very, very hard. Keep in mind that I spent way too much time doing what I was doing. And I kept hitting these dead ends, and I would dig myself a hole. And the result of that would be to basically write 50 more pages about how I got in this hole. And, and I found that I wasn't finishing that process or finishing maybe that chapter because it just got to be too convoluted, too deep. And in reality, I was trying to come up with these theories of why things were happening. And that really wasn't part of the story. The story was about me and supposedly about me and how I came to eventually create a podcast so I could find people out there like myself. So, yeah, I decided to rewrite the book. And wow, it's not something that I wanted to do, but I decided it needed to read more like a novel. And so I just went for it. I guess somewhere between about 10 months and a year ago, I sat down and started reading what I already had. And it was so long that I knew there had to be a change. And I'd go through it page by page, and that did not work. You can't take what I had and rewrite it that way. So I basically started over. The blueprint was there, the outline rather. And so I followed the outline as far as the content of the chapter and, my account or my story, what happened at a certain given place in time, was certainly in that chapter, but to make it look and read more like a novel, I felt really, really told the story. And it's ultimately, I think, what people want to read. I've read a lot of UFO books, man. Yeah, I got a bunch. And I've been reading them for a very, very long time. And, there are some that are really, really hard to plow through. And a lot of times it's because it's the same content. People have the same theory on why they're seeing UFOs and why they're getting abducted by aliens and whatever. It's kind of stale at times. So I didn't want people to experience what I was experiencing, especially you out there who read a lot of these. And not that they're not great. And I certainly appreciate everybody who has written a book. I mean, my God, it's one hell of a process, and to actually get it published is a whole different story. I think we're fortunate now where we can do our own publishing. You know, at the bare minimum, you know, we can turn it into an ebook, have it online, and then have a few copies, you know, for our good friends and supporters. So that's kind of my intention now. So yeah, I've been rewriting this, and I love the story. I love the content, and I have a good enough memory, you know, of certain things where I do remember dialogue. You know, it's really funny. You really find out a lot about your memory. I do a lot of other things. Like I like to play guitar, and one of the things that you know, like I try to sing, try to write songs, but I never remember lyrics. You know, it's I always have to have the lyrics there. I can remember the song, play a song all day long, and you know, I've learned a lot of artists, almost their entire songbook. For example, Pearl Jam, big favorite of mine, but I can't remember the lyrics. You know, I can play the songs on a couple of different instruments, including piano, but I can't remember the lyrics. So this rewriting of this book has been very challenging. It's good that I can remember a lot of the things that went on, and it's good that I can remember the lyrics so well, and I have not the lyrics, rather, not the dialogue so well that I had with certain people. You know, for example, you know, back in the late 60s, I'm 56 years old, and, you know, I remember conversations with my mom, you know, back in the day, and with my grandfather, you know, when I was 4 and 5 years old. And so obviously there's so much that has happened in my life that when you pick up this book and read it, you know, people will wonder, well, how does he remember this? Well, there's a lot more that I don't remember, and it's not in the book. So I'm only basically putting in the book what I can remember. And of course, you know, for example, seeing an alien at the foot of my bed, having a conversation with my mom about that. And well, of course I remember that, but obviously there's other conversations that I had with people that I let in on this, you know, very few I let in on this little secret I had, but you know, I remember those specific conversations. So it's really not unusual for me to remember things like that. And, you know, I've been skeptical about some authors that I've read before, but after going through this process, I understand, and people do remember. And as a kid, you know, I would write down a lot of stuff. So I have, you know, some of the old theme books and stuff, and some spiral bound notebooks I had, you know, since I was like 12 years old. And some of those were from school. My mom saved those, but like in the back, you know, I'd only probably use the first 20 pages. I didn't write much for school, but I would write other things in the back. So I would start the process writing in the back, you know, basically from the reverse side of the book, flip it open, and, you know, it's page 1, and then flip it this way, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, telling little stories about what happened, whether it be in school, whether it be in a football game I played in, or whatever. You know, there's little blurbs in there, even in the annual that you would get in high school, where, you know, people would sign your annual. That entailed me bringing that to school and then passing it around with people, which I didn't do. But I would write little stories about people, you know, on their photo, and it's kind of interesting to read that. So I kept a lot of notes, and I kept a lot of these books. I mean, a lot of people don't do that, but I have books from my childhood, and they're going to be illustrated in the book about, you know, I wrote in these as a little kid, 5, 6 years old, and I could write a few words when I was 4 and 5 years old. And you can see in the back of, there's one book, it's a Lassie book, an old book about Lassie, which there's always 2 or 3 pages in the back or the front. They're completely blank, and I would fill those up as a kid. And, which is interesting. I don't know anybody else who did that, but I did. And, you know, what I could write, there's like 4 or 5 words I could write when I was a young lad of about 4 or 5. I would also do these little, you know, drawings and different things in there. And those are interesting. Those are interesting because I didn't have those books for a while, and my parents ended up moving out of my childhood home and really close to me, and they threw away or sold everything. And but they kept some of my stuff, and so I still have some of this stuff, and they didn't completely throw it away. So it's really cool that it ends up in the book. But yeah, so I want to talk about the book, and I'll even read from the book. If you want to read more about some excerpts that I have online, go to my website again, myalienlifepodcast.com, and click on the book, and you can read a couple of the chapters, part of the chapters that I wrote for the book, that I kind of finished that part with the rewrite. So I put a little bit online so you guys could check it out. But so let me read this, and I'd like some input. Tell me what you think. If you'd like to read it again, or read it yourself, go to the website. But there's a really cool illustration that I added, and the book is called Little Black Book of the Cosmos, and there's an illustration of my little black book. And so what is my little black book? Every year, the local church, I live in a really tiny town, 100 people out in the middle of nowhere. And we had one church, United Methodist Church, and they would have a rummage sale. And they had a rummage sale, and they had this bake sale bazaar thing. So people would bring in crap that they wanted to get rid of. They brought in baked goods, and they brought in, handmade stuff. And I'm assuming, and I should ask my mom and include this, that the profit that was made on the rummage sale went to the church. Sorry, I don't know that right now. Never thought about it, but glad we had a chance to get together and we can talk about it. So what I would do, and my mom would give me money, and we'd walk over to the rummage sale, and I'd always go with her. Later on, when I was a little bit older, I would go, by myself or with a friend. And it was, the first few times, it was magical. I mean, the stuff that was there was just mind-blowing to me as a kid, because it was so fantastic. One of the reasons why was because, there was toys and clothing that belonged to older kids in my town that I knew about. Maybe my neighbor had a Matchbox car collection or something like that. Later on, these guys were 10 years older than me, and we might have had I knew one of their younger brothers or whatever had been over, and all of a sudden I would see their amazing stuff at this rummage sale and bazaar. So that was really cool. So the first time that I went, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was hugely into G.I. Joes. My older brother gave me a bit of his collection, and I loved I think it was Testes model cars. There was always, kids we used to put together models when I was a kid, and people would have those there, either the complete vehicle or maybe it was partially put together and the box was with it with the rest of the parts. I love that. So, so I used to go to that, and that was part of my alien life. And let me read about this a little bit, and you can kind of hear how that came together and with strange experiences that I had as a child. So I'm going to read this. So indulge me a bit, and thank you for listening. From a place where light and dark begin and end, a place where you see your dawn and death both trapped in darkness so thick it penetrates your soul while leaving your mind a singularity of madness. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested all his work from the Holy Bible. And then sometime between the seventh and the Genesis of Middle America, a lovely blue-haired lady undoubtedly created the ubiquitous Methodist bake sale, rummage, and bazaar. Look for the signs: homemade pie and a bottomless cup of Folgers for only $1.25. When I was 6, Mom took me to the United Methodist bake sale, rummage, and bazaar. Heaven was one Saturday in June, and I was one block away from the church I dreaded every Sunday. I cried as she combed my hair and spit on her fingers and roughly wiped some facial debris away and whisked me out the door. She took my hand and walked the gravel road to church. I knew it was Saturday, and it wasn't fair that I had to go to church on Saturday and Sunday. I begged her to let me stop by Jed's house, the kid of the year in first grade, so he could go with us. Jed was in the process of moving, and my mom said that he couldn't go. Besides, his family were Catholics and wouldn't be caught dead in a United Methodist church. I begged her to let me stay home, and I promised I would wait in the house until she got home. As we walked up the weather-worn concrete steps, one of the two big varnished doors in the United Methodist Church swung open, and we were met by the extraordinary smell of Methodist Church Folgers coffee that turned my stomach cold, despite knowing it would just be boiling hot and I would smell like Methodist Folgers for days. The church also had that small town, indescribable church smell. Just close your eyes and breathe. And in moments, I knew I'd be sitting on those dark hardwood pews. And soon I'd be fighting the urge to fall asleep with nothing in my stomach but Folgers coffee with Coffee Mate, drunk from styrofoam cups with 60-day-old cookies that tasted like Margie Ingle King's antique Norge freezer. What was this? Two blue-haired old ladies greeted us at the door, but were seated at a small table in some kind of gray box. They asked my mom how many pie tickets we'd like. My mom said 3, and I was in a state of shock and utter confusion and anger and fear of what the United Methodists had planned for us on a Saturday. My mom gave the bluer-haired old lady $2.25, exact change, peculiar. We usually paid the preacher via wooden plate during the never-ending church service just prior to getting the little piece of bread, thankfully, because I was always starving. And then someone would point out the grape juice cup, which wasn't nearly enough because after being in church forever, I was left starving. Several hours into that service, I was always wishing for my second cup of boiling hot Folgers and even a mystery cookie that came from God only knows where in the freezer of small town Kevin, Montana. That's Kevin, Montana with, looks like Kevin, pronounced Kevin. I followed my mom with the 3 tickets in hand through the right door, not the left church door, and we were greeted by sawhorses covered with boards, along with every table the church ever owned, covered in the most glorious junk ever seen by a boy who was barely 6 years old. And there was pie everywhere. I didn't see the nearby tables with polyester old lady clothing, and I totally missed the kids' clothing, which I was glad because most of the kids' clothing were from kids that were at least 5 to 10 years older than myself, and there was no way I would wear any of that. Obviously, clothes from the kids of the blue-haired old lady and other many blue-haired old ladies from around town who are currently at the United Methodist Church, folding clothes, pouring cups of coffee, and slicing pie. So they put together this amazing rummage sale, and you would start it out, everything had a price on it, usually masking tape. And so they would write the price on each item. And then in the afternoon, it was like something ridiculous, like it was $1 a bag, and we would go back and we'd fill it up. So I guess it was about 1972. So on a Saturday in June in 1972, a Methodist bake sale, rummage sale, and bazaar, and a 10-cent bazaar item. A Methodist bake sale, rummage, and bazaar, 10-cent used 1957 address book, and the party line telephone in our house literally gave me access to the world and beyond. The tiny town of less than 200 people that I grew up in suddenly became the gateway to everywhere, and all it took was my growing curiosity. So what I'd purchased was pretty incredible, actually. It was a 1957 address book. It's about that tall. And you can see it online on my website. Had a little weird pen made out of steel that hooked on the side. I heard there was a little loop, so you closed it up. The pen kind of shot down through this little loop. But when you opened it up, there really wasn't a lot in this little address book, but it did say on it belongs to Clarence Thomas. I doubt if there's any relationship to the Clarence Thomas, but says belongs to Clarence Thomas, and it had a phone number in there, 442-2333. And amazing. So then on the first page, there was a couple of different things written in there. One of it said it said the Library of the Library of Congress, and it had the I'm assuming it was the phone number of the Library of Congress. And at that time, I had never heard of the Library of Congress, and so I had to ask my mom, what is the Library of Congress? Now, it really piqued her curiosity, because she really wanted to know why the hell that I wanted this address book. And I had no explanation for that. I don't know. I don't know why I wanted this address book, but it was really cool, I thought. Don't really know the feeling I had back then, but yeah, I just wanted it. And I think because it was older, this was like 1972, and the year of the address book I could see was 1957. It belonged to somebody, and there was somebody's name in there. They had written this phone number in there, and I really didn't have much of a concept of what the phone was, and what people used it for. And the phone would ring in our house, and somebody would pick it up, and I'd talk to my grandparents, usually just my grandfather, very rarely. Later on, I started calling my friend down the street, but I had not really, at that point, really cared. I was like 6 or 7. Didn't really care about the phone that much. But anyway, so that gave me something to think about, this phone number of the Library of Congress. So I gave it to my mom. I wrote my name in there, and then I wrote my mom's name in there, or I wrote mom for some weird reason. Anyway, she looked at it, and I asked her what the Library of Congress was, and she sort of explained it not really well. I don't really remember that conversation. But so I had this address book, and I wanted to put stuff in it. For some reason, that really piqued my curiosity, and I got more into using the phone. And I really go into it in the book. Most of the book is about that and how it related to my life. But I called the Library of Congress, not the way, because I really didn't know how to dial the phone that well. So I remember I was like one of my first few days in school. We had the school office was by the gymnasium, and kids were always using a phone during lunch, and the older kids. And, if I was in first or kindergarten or first grade, you could use the phone. All you had to do was ask during lunch. But I remember all the big kids were using the phone. And one day for lunch, we had green peas, canned green peas, and I couldn't eat them. No way. So in my mind, I was going to leave. I was going to ditch school. So the first thing I did was I was going to, claim that I was sick. So I wanted to call my mom. So went down to use the phone. My brother was by the gymnasium, and he was 7 years older than I was. So he's standing by the gym door, which is just right across the hall from the school office where the phone's located. So I said, what's our phone number? And he said, this is what he said. He said, 2470. At that time, you had to dial the prefix and the 2470. So I went in, picked up the phone. It was the first phone call that I'd ever attempted to make, and I dialed 2470 and got this weird signal and nothing. I couldn't call, and I was mortified. So I just walked home, and I lived maybe three quarters of a mile from school, and my mom's like, "What are you doing home?" And she made me go back to school. She took me back to school, and yeah, there wasn't much trouble there. But, that was my first phone call. So in our house, there's an illustration of this in the book. There was a regular phone, and it was a wall phone. It was kind of like off-white, and had a rotary dial on it. And anytime somebody wanted to make a call, it was from that phone. Upstairs, it was different. There was this old Gilsonite phone, and I believe Gilsonite is a product of byproduct of oil. So it's like a hard plastic, and you've seen they made jewelry out of Gilsonite. They made all kinds of stuff out of Gilsonite. So basically, it's kind of like hard plastic. So upstairs, we had this Gilsonite phone. Instead of a rotary dial, it sort of had that center circle on it that was printed with your phone number, except this one was blank. And it had no rotary dial. You couldn't dial it. You could pick it up, and you could hear dial tone sometimes. When I was really little, I don't remember hearing anything on it. You'd pick it up, and it was dead. However, from time to time, it would ring. Now, when our phone would ring downstairs, you could pick that phone up and you could talk to whoever was on the other end, which was really strange because there was nothing there. You couldn't hear anybody, hear anything, but you could hear the phone downstairs ring. You could pick it up and talk. Then from time to time, there'd be a little quarter ring, maybe a tinkle, maybe one time, just a little bit. And we were on a party. So that phone picked up and did something when our neighbor's phone, and it wasn't our closest neighbor, it was 3 blocks away. And this little old lady, Mrs. Johnson, who lived on the corner, from what I gather, when somebody would call her, once in a while, our little phone upstairs, Gilsonite phone, ancient Gilsonite antique phone would ring. And you could pick that up and you could hear her talking. But if that phone rang a little bit and you left it on the receiver, if you went downstairs, picked up that phone downstairs worked normal. And you could not hear Mrs. Johnson on that party line. For some reason, that phone didn't work with the party line, except for this one instance when Mrs. Johnson had a cat and she had the phone on the floor. Sometimes the cat would knock the handle off and would lay there. The transceiver would lay there on the floor. And if it laid there long enough, you could pick up that phone upstairs and you could hear, her TV or whatever noise was going on in the living room. But we couldn't make any call in the house upstairs or downstairs. Well, you could never do it on the upstairs phone, but the downstairs phone, you could not make a phone call once she had that phone off the hook for a certain period of time. So, we'd be yelling into the phone, hang up your phone, and it would never happen. So my brother, by default, my older brother, would always have to go down there and tell Mrs. Johnson to hang her phone back up so we could use our phone because pretty soon our whole system was dead. Knowing that, what ended up happening was from time to time, I would be upstairs and my room was right next to this phone in the hallway. And I would pick up the phone just to listen, and seldom, but it would happen that Mrs. Johnson would be on the phone talking to somebody. And I could hear the conversation. And that in itself wasn't really interesting to me. The fact that there was an anomaly with this phone, it was weird because it didn't act like the phone downstairs. And I was very observant, was starting to gather how the downstairs phone worked. And, in time, maybe when I was 6 or 7, I would make calls to my best friend down the street. And so I started using the phone and it became really, really interesting to me. So one time I was upstairs and I remember this. I picked up the phone and I was listening and it was dead and there was nobody there, and Mrs. Johnson wasn't there and the phone obviously was working normally. So I listened and then I touched my finger on the button and clicked it a couple of times. And I just kept clicking that. And all of a sudden I heard somebody say, hello, or I'm sorry. They said, operator, how can I help you? I said, hello. And after that, I just was stunned. I was frozen. I really didn't know what to do. Hung the phone back up. So it was a short time later, I decided I would give it another try. So I picked up that phone, maybe it was days later, and kind of went through the same scenario. And the operator came on and, this is operator, how may I help you? And I didn't say anything. She said, hello. And I didn't say anything. And I was really nervous. I'm sure she could hear me. I was probably breathing really hard. And she said, who would you like to call? And I said, Clarence Thomas. And she said, I don't remember what she said, but I do remember the phone ringing. And that scared me. So I hung up the phone. And that day kind of transformed my whole life. It planted the seed in my brain that I could make phone calls with that phone. And I could call anybody I wanted. So I remember specifically asking, this was later, I don't know how much time later, it all seems like within the same period of several weeks, maybe, I don't know. But so I had my black book, and it had the Library of Congress in it. I wanted more phone numbers. I wanted a lot of phone numbers. I wanted to fill it full of phone numbers. I thought it would be that cool. In the back, I put my grandparents' phone number in because I asked my grandfather to write his phone number, his name and his phone number, which is in there. So another time the operator answered. She asked me who I'd like to call, and I said the Library of Congress. And she said, she gave me like 3 options, and it was like, would you like, she gave me 2 numbers, they were 4-digit. And I remember saying, or would you like 5000? Well, I had the number in my little black book, 5000. So that blew my mind. So obviously whoever Clarence Thomas was wrote that number, Library of Congress. So I said 5000. Now this was the time we had gotten back. We had visited my cousin and my aunt and uncle in Minnesota. And what was on TV all the time was Watergate. Everybody was talking about Richard Nixon. And so I'm not sure exactly how this worked, but I ended up getting Richard Nixon's number from the Library of Congress. Now, I don't think I ever called Richard Nixon. I don't know. I had my mother write Richard Nixon. And I had written down in the back of the book just the phone number. And I said, Mom, can you put Richard Nixon's phone number in here? And she wrote Richard Nixon and then wrote this phone number that I gave her from the back of the book. And she had no idea. I mean, she felt that, I was just making this stuff up. So another time in this book, and I wasn't really too specific or really cared what phone numbers I had, but I knew that she told me that the Library of Congress was like a big museum. I'd never been to a museum before. So I had contacted the Library of Congress just upstairs, clicked the phone. Operator asked me again who I'd like to talk to. I said the Library of Congress, 5000. Phone starts ringing. And person that answered the phone, I don't really recall this. I just know that the number is in my little black book of the cosmos twice. I asked for the museum. So she said, sir, or she might have said ma'am, now that I think about it. Because I I was a little kid, which I thought was really, I don't know. Ma'am or sir, it doesn't really matter because I don't have too much about the Air and Space Museum in the book. But they gave me whoever was on the phone gave me the phone number for the Air and Space Museum, which was 628-4422. And prior to that, they asked me, person asked me which museum did I wish to speak with, or which museum I wish to call. And I said I didn't know. And she said, well, what about the Air and Space Museum? And I said, okay. So I had my mom write on their mini museums in Washington, D.C. or something like that. And so that kind of piqued my curiosity. And I was really, really, after that, into museums. And I'd never been to a museum. And over the period of the next year, when I started filling this book up with different phone numbers, I was discovering that I get all kinds of information from the Library of Congress, and then I could get all kinds of information from all these museums. So that was cool. And so I still have this little black book, and one of these nights I'll get it out and post some more pictures online. But one of the chapters in the book, 2 chapters rather, are devoted to what I call the alien tonsillectomy. Now, I did do a podcast on my tonsillectomy. And again, if you remember, or if you haven't heard that podcast, I have 2 very specific memories as a child of getting my tonsils taken out. And, a lot of people, including my mother, would probably tell you that, it was pretty traumatic because my brother and I both had to get our tonsils taken out at the same time. I think my brother was having stomach problems, and our doctor, who was notorious for taking everybody's tonsils out in the whole county, told my mom that she better bring me in too and get my tonsils taken out. So, one of the memories is me, getting my tonsils taken out. I remember being pushed in. I remember putting a mask over my face. It was black. And the reason I remember that part so vividly is because that plasticky chemical smell. And, but I remember putting this black mask over my face. And I remember waking up with a really sore throat and trying to eat ice cream. And it was, even as a kid, ice cream to me, man, was a big deal. So this was the cheap shit, horrible ice cream that came in those little plastic cups with a wooden spoon, where most of the time you taste the wooden spoon. So I remember that vividly. So even though I was supposed to get all the ice cream I wanted, I didn't want any ice cream because it wasn't great. So the other memory I have is my parents walking out of the room, not saying much, and being stunned. And I'm just sitting there like, what's going on? I look over at my brother, and, our parents are, and I don't have a clue to what's going on, why I'm there. So I bolt out of the room, chasing my parents down the hall. I can see 2 figures at the end of the hall, and it's this weird fog. It's just this weird fog. And I want to read a little bit about this part. And I'll start kind of right in the middle, but I looked at Mike's face, and his eyes were closing like he was sleeping. His mouth was wide open, silent. Panic. The pounding in my heart drowned out any possible sound that could be in the room or in the hallway, and I can't hear them if they try to come and get me. That was in my mind. Somebody was coming to get me, and I was worried that I couldn't hear them if they came and tried to get me. So I looked back at Mike, hoping to see him once again sitting on the bed and praying he would say to me, "What are you looking at, dork?" Mike had risen off the bed a few inches more toward me. I have this vivid memory of my brother actually levitating off the bed. His body had also turned right a bit, which was toward the open door, and I expected the Catholic nun and her gown of sheets to come bursting through any minute. It was a Catholic hospital. My first experience with a nun and That was mind blowing. I had no idea what to think of this person, and the outfit that she wore, it was quite stunning to me at the time. And then all of a sudden my ears were filled with run, and I heard it. Or my brain told me to run. I didn't recognize the voice, but I felt it was good advice. The cold tile on my bare feet made it clear I was now standing. My toes gripped the cold floor, and I was surprised I could move at all. If I hadn't tried to move, I may have stood there forever until they came. And I was always worried that somebody was going to come for me. Run. Louder and clearer now. The voice could have been my mom's voice, but it was obscured by my rapid heartbeats and pounding heart. I took one small step forward. I looked at Mike, who had now made a quarter turn. I was standing at the side of his bed. Decision made. I would run. A very brave decision for a young boy. Mike was on his own. I took one more step forward and was falling forward. I knew I had to run to keep from falling, so I did. In 3 large steps, I was at the doorway. One more, I was halfway through it, and I was turning right, just as my parents did when they left the room. The hallway was long, and I remember walking most of its distance when the Catholic nun brought us to the hospital bed. As I make my running right turn, my right foot slips on something thick, cold, and slippery. My foot slides a few inches and regains its traction. I reach out with my left foot for the sprint. The hallway is in a thick fog. The fog is filled with light, and I can make out 2 human shapes in the distance where the exit should be. I shout, "Mom, Dad," and there was no response. So that was, that's a very vivid memory I had. It was extremely scary. The other memory I have of the event, which my parents didn't leave me there. Obviously they weren't with me the whole time, but so it's really, really strange. The nun I described as the tall Catholic nun with the wide black eyes, and felt as they were that was my caretaker or my keeper. Later on, they were joined by others. I couldn't move as I lay there. I see white shadows moving in the fog. There were 3 to my left and 3 to my right, including the Catholic nun, which was supporting my back. I actually felt a hand go down to the lower part of my back. And when it reached the lower part of my back, my feet left the floor. Obviously, I'm not reading that part at the moment because that's probably 2 pages worth. But my feet were off the floor, and, I'm drifting at a pretty good speed through this fog with this hand that I could feel at the small of my back. I hear a faint sound familiar to a tiny breeze in my right ear, and I'm aware of it coming from a golf ball-sized orb of fog flying up and down the length of my body. Each time it flew by my head, it was joined by another, and there were more than a dozen now. It was impossible to tell how many. My minder to the right slid its hand out from under my back. The small orbs of fog now orbited my body in every direction at incredible speeds. I could hear them quietly whiz by my ears. Occasionally, they would brush my body like a warm ball of cotton. This continued for what seemed like an hour, and all the while I had complete consciousness and was aware of my circumstance. The orbs of fog then orbited my upper torso, then concentrated on my head. At one point, my head slowly fell back while my mouth opened wide. My body was beyond my control, and the movement felt relaxed like a normal function. So in addition to these nuns, 3 on my right, 3 on my left, there was those little orbs just up and down, up and down. Later on in this chapter, I describe how, I'm floating through this fog, and it's just made of all these tiny orbs. I mean, there's fog with all these little tiny orbs in the millions all around me. So it was a very dramatic scene that, I still have a pretty vivid memory of it, and especially these nuns. And at one point, I don't think I have it in the excerpt of the book on my website, but when I first see this tall nun, it comes out of a slit, which it just all of a sudden appears out of this slit in the fog, and it was bizarre. It's scary, and yeah, it makes me nervous when I think about it. Editing this was tough. Putting this together as two distinct memories was tough. And, you know, I always remembered that as a kid, but it wasn't until I was like 15 or 16 years old, when other things started to happen, that I started to realize that, you know, they're all related. This, you know, obviously this isn't a normal thing when I see some sort of alien-esque nun with dark eyes and these floating little foggy orbs all around me, in a very organized effort to do something with me, which I don't know what that is. Still don't know what that is. You know, other accounts that I have where I was the presence of ET being, you know, they were fairly dramatic and frightening as well. You know, they do seem always related. I do feel that I had a minder or a caretaker, and which looked quite a bit different later on in my life, you know, prior to me turning 16. And, but I believe it's the same organism, the same guy, lack of a better term, some guy. Don't know if it was a nun, don't know really what that is. I do know that it's extraterrestrial and related to Greys, and because I've seen the Greys in the same room or on the same craft with me. So throughout my life, there was this minder, the caretaker, and I always say that it was tough to take care of me. You know, I was kind of hyper as a kid and very active, always on the move, more than other kids. And so this ET somehow, for whatever reason, was in charge of me. And I wasn't going to let it happen easy for it. It was a scary, frightening thing. And, you know, part of my life, you know, took some of my childhood away, ruined some of my childhood just because, you know, that was always in the back of my mind. I was always drawn to places that I shouldn't have probably gone, and I would go there anyway, despite being scared to death. It's not like I was an adrenaline junkie. I don't know what it was. It was hugely frightening, and I hated every minute of it. And, you know, there were certain things that I tried to avoid, you know, doing as a kid. But then again, you know, I find myself, you know, right in the midst of what would be an alien abduction, and I'd put myself there. So it's all in the book. When am I going to get this book done? I have no idea. I'm a busy guy. So FYI, I'm building a house for my family, and me and my 15-year-old son, we're doing that together. Most of the time it's just me, since he's only with me every other week. So I'm working super hard on that. That's a vacation rental by owner. And also on my property, I have a couple of RV spaces that I put together. So that's kind of my retirement plan. And when I retire, in 3 or 4 years, you know, this will be probably a 5-night-a-week venture, podcasting. And hopefully I can get my ship back from FedEx, you know, because I've had trouble. I mean, it's been utterly amazing how many times that, you know, I've set out to do a podcast and I've lost electricity. And as you know, I had an earthquake one night, which didn't stop. We still did the podcast, despite having an earthquake. It's just crazy shit happening all the time. And I'm not surprised by it anymore. I mean, I haven't been surprised, you know, for decades, but it's just, it's these side trips and these different courses that I have to take from time to time that keeps me utterly confused at times. And then again, it keeps me busy enough to where I don't dwell on stuff that has happened to me. And, for so long I thought about it. This podcast has been just an amazing experience as far as me hearing from you and your experience. It's been very, very helpful. So it's been a therapy, and that's kind of what I set out to do. That was really the only goal I had. Now, obviously, my goals are bigger, and hopefully, I could turn this into a full-time gig soon, like in the next 3 years, and probably won't come close to full-time, in the next 2 for sure. But that would be my goal, and my goal is to reach as many people as I possibly can and find out their story and how it relates to mine. And you're part of it. Thank you very much. I'm Cameron Logan. Please check out the website, www.myalienlifepodcast.com. Again, there you'll find all the episodes. And, I had a couple other podcasts that I did, which unrelated to My Alien Life, but, I've got to interview musicians and actors and whoever. And, that was kind of my intent, to find out what experiences they had that were borderline paranormal. Came to the conclusion that even though we weren't talking about what I usually talk about in My Alien Life podcast, is that most people have some paranormal weird experience sometime in their life. And, that's fascinating. We'll get deeper into that soon. Thanks for joining me on this Friday night. Thanks for joining me any night. It's been my pleasure to talk to you all. And if you need to reach out to me and tell a story, go to my website. My email's there. Email me. Thank you. This is Cameron Logan. Good night.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by ELEON. You can find all ELEON's work online at Heart Dance Records.